Yep. Everything is getting set up. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
You started the stream already, right?
Yes. I sent you the link.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So let me just check whether it's low latency. Oh, yeah, that echoed through my microphone. All right. So how have you been today?
I've been tired. Ran out of energy drinks. No caffeine.
Uh,
I need caffeine.
can't relate too much. Hmm. Although I guess tea has caffeine, so
Tea has pathetic amounts of caffeine.
yeah, that's good. I'm worried that if I start drinking things with high amounts of caffeine, I'm just not gonna be able to stop.
Well, to me, it's kind of the opposite. Because chicken and egg scenario, I felt tired constantly before I started drinking caffeine. And so I started drinking caffeine. And now people are saying, well, you're tired all the time because you drink a lot of caffeine. Well, fucking, well, no, because if I quit, then I'm just still going to feel tired all the time. So,
Yeah. Yeah, that's. So, are you one of the two people watching now?
I don't count now.
Okay. So, whoever this is, hello.
Hello, stranger.
It's a shame I can't pin chat messages.
I mean, I
Uh,
can remove them, but.
hmm.
Welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy and abide by our community guidelines. I am the streamer.
I'm gonna ban you if you don't abide by the community guidelines from your own stream.
Amazing.
Yes. Let me
Uh,
see. Whenever I just want to test, send messages just to test. I never come up with things to say that aren't just gonna sound cringy.
like poopity scoop.
See, that's all right. Not a bad one.
So,
But
is
I
Shade
can't
going to come
plagiarize.
now, or is he going to come later?
He said to wait for him, so I assume that he's going to join in
Alright.
like a minute or something. Ah,
Amazing.
yeah, we've discussed a bit of the submissions yesterday, mainly just making fun of one particular one.
We're going really hard on Orphan, but that's
Yeah,
because, despite all of its flaws, the story is still interesting enough to talk about.
exactly. Unlike, Dom's.
Unlike Tom's, it's just like I sent it to pending, and he just responded with, So what was the point in the story?
Yes,
And my
that's
response to
similar.
that was latex.
I said a similar thing that there's one story which what's what's the point? If it just ended with and I was right at the end, it would be like a Last Malone style submission.
Yeah, but Dom style is like a Lost Melon style submission, except he screws it up and makes it less funny.
Yeah, Last Melon. Yeah, that's the I was talking about. Uh, I mean, it's technically I liked it more than his Ship Jam one.
His Ship Jam one was okay. His stories are consistently plotless.
Yeah, and this one at least had more of it.
It's like it's got a lot of character development. He was alive and now he's not.
This is gonna be a running meme, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. It's called character development.
Oh yes, hello Shade. So
Hello,
Shade wasn't in
Shade.
this chat before. Now he's in this chat. So character development.
What?
All
We're
right.
talking about character development.
For who?
Dom?
Oh.
Dom's,
Meanwhile, I-
did you read
You're talking
Dom's
about
story?
that I watched you read it, the devil.
Yeah, the devil.
It would have been great if it would have just ended on and I was right.
Everyone agrees.
yeah.
It's a great story. It's got a lot of character development. Dom was alive and then he wasn't.
No, my favorite character development was he went from being by the way, his name is pronounced Jericho.
Oh yeah, everyone, Orphan pointed that out too. I just don't know how Orphan keeps, making these stories, knowing that we're gonna, like, nitpick the crap out of them and just make fun of every sentence. I can admire that. I can also admire his inability to really consistently make it so things make sense.
It's like apparently he had a lot of details in his storyboarding, but
I liked Asteroids a lot better than I liked Dystopia Mindset. But
Yeah, same.
Asteroids definitely had a lot of points said about it that I was kind of like, eh. One of the main ones being what Enchnode said about it takes 7 pages for something to happen.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't a huge fan of how self-deprecating the guy became at the end of the story because it had just ended with him killing himself anyway, and I was just like, well, what was the fucking point of reading this whole story?
Character development. He was alive and then he died.
Yeah, no, he was a normal Jericho, and then he was a what was it, a burning Jericho? Character development.
Yes. Yeah, including Jericho and those shipmates was one of the kind of more useless plot lines of the story. Should have just focused on the family.
And then he, and then the button. Remember that? It's like, wait, there was a button next to the door, and you didn't press it.
Yeah, I noticed it on my read-through. Then we noticed it on the story.
I'm surprised you didn't make the comment that because he was upset that the robot didn't press the button. I don't know why you didn't make the comment of, oh, well, if you couldn't press the button, why did you expect the robot to?
Okay.
Was the robot programmed to press the button? Also, he beat the shit out of the robot and broke it. And then later is just like, well, I turned it on and then it worked.
And he's still probably gonna get 3rd place.
Yeah. Maybe.
I don't think Derry's going to beat him because Derry's story doesn't really go anywhere.
Okay,
at least
neither story has a real plot, but at least Derry's had an ironically satisfying ending. I'm gonna vouch for him because he's my clanmate, but he did have a very ironically satisfying.
Orphans had a definitely more fleshed out plot. Not a good one, but that doesn't make it non-existent. And the ending was more emotionally impactful in a way that's
at
not
least
just.
Derry tried to build a world.
Yeah, but you don't really get points for trying. I don't. As I said, if Derry's submission went somewhere, he could have maybe beaten Orphan, but no, I don't think he will.
Also, Laz,
Hmm?
Also,
I'm just gonna turn push to talk off.
okay.
Oh. All right.
Yeah, I'll just
I-
mute myself if something happens.
I have push to talk on normally, but I turned it off for the stream because it doesn't make sense.
I'll turn up my decibel a little bit so it doesn't pick up background noise.
All right.
No, you made a comment, Laz, that I pulled a gun to your head while we were reviewing. When I think it was honestly the other way around. Not a day went by that I wasn't sitting there on my laptop, like, let me just relax and watch some YouTube and
Play some Minecraft.
insert Discord notification sound effect, Lasman. So are we gonna go through the story now?
Well, yes, because we didn't have time.
We don't have any time. I'm like, you had like 2 weeks to write this. Why are you only on chapter 4? And
Yeah.
Laz is like, don't worry
I
about it. We need to
first two
review it.
ideas.
Okay,
And also my complete inexperience in writing.
This is what I said yesterday off stream. Is that Lasmon probably has this lore gem in the bag as long as he doesn't fuck up the ending.
No promises there. I'll tell you what. I did not. I did a skim through of the final chapter. I didn't actually do any I didn't recommend any edits or anything for it. So teach their own. Teach their own.
Oh boy, I'm in for a treat, aren't I? Anyway, let's get this started.
All right, yeah. So we last time we ended at the end of chapter 3. So do you remember? Can you summarize what happened in the first 3 chapters?
Okay, Jim and Bob met. Jim almost died.
Like twice.
That's it.
Yeah, because almost dying is basically Jim's entire life.
Which is funny because death isn't his Arcana card.
Like,
Yeah.
it's okay. Essentially, the first half of the story sounds like world building, but if it isn't elaborated on later, then it's just going to be filler.
And I don't think there's filler because it's like technically world building, which in this case, I guess, getting to know the characters better.
I'm not gonna lie, Internode, I was very surprised with how the story ended up coming out. It was actually really good. I think you're gonna enjoy reading through it.
Yeah, I definitely didn't have any expectations when I started, other than okay, maybe I'll introduce a few characters, have some.
Even myself thought this was just gonna be a meme story about the fucking meme Jim and Bob until we got to like chapter 4 where you're at right now, and then I was like, okay, this is actually a little bit more than that.
All right. Here's to Jim's recovery. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Bob's bar was buzzing. Its inhabitants were in a merry mood, eager to celebrate Jim finally being released from the hospital. Most of them didn't know who he was or why he was there in the first place. Seems they were simply looking for an excuse to celebrate. Bob Jubilee. I have never seen that word ever.
Jubilantly?
Jubilee. Jimily.
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 No, it's Jim, not Bob.
Jimily. Slid in his chair opposite to Jim and launched a glass of margarita across the table in his direction. Did you really say a glass of margarita? It's just
what's wrong with it?
It's just a margarita. This isn't something that most people say. It's just
Whatever.
It's just one of those things that's just wrong.
What would you know about glasses of margarita, Internet?
Because I've had some before.
Yeah, I can't relate much there. I mean, I know I am one big alcoholic, but
I'm not an alcoholic. I can quit anytime I want.
Yeah,
that's what they all say.
You sure you don't want to try our new black coffee, eh? Placed an order just for you, mate. Come on, Bob. You know it's not my cup of tea. Jim playfully replied, "In the kind of parallel universe where I drink coffee, you're a short Hispanic man. I'll have you know that I take full offense to whatever you just said to me. Thank you very much. Didn't you have somewhere to be, so?" "Oh, damn it, I did," Jim nodded. "This accursed bar will have me late for my own funeral in no time." He quickly downed the glass and took off. He was supposed to check out a recently opened restaurant with Bill Willie in 30 minutes as they arranged via text. Before then, he decided to quickly drop in at his flat to pick up his wallet. He didn't need it at the bar anymore. as Bob gave him drinks free of charge, something he made sure not to abuse. Jim entered his apartment and slammed the door shut. The lack of sounds made for a gratifying change and almost made him want to plop down on the couch and not go anywhere. Knowing that this would be very impolite, he sighed and made for his room, which is when something unusual caught his gaze. The door to Bob's bedroom was ajar, daylight intrinsically peering out of it. Jim had never caught a glimpse of Bob's room before, and for a moment curiosity got the best of him, and he pushed the door open. The room is in disarray, with blankets sliding down onto the floor from a messy bed, and the drawers of a cabinet open. What? Okay. Jim was about to enter it and have a look around when he stopped himself, realizing that it would be improper to look through another person's room without their permission. He turned to leave. As he was closing the door, his eyes fell upon the contents of the topmost open drawer, prompting him to draw near for a better look. Jim's insides froze immediately upon seeing the white powder in the drawer. Is this heroin?
He did it. Lazulin did it.
No regrets.
It was a quote unquote no regret play.
Oh man, this has just been one big meme so far. He recognized it effortlessly, having dealt with numerous cases of heroin use throughout his career. At this moment, all of the doubts about Bob he had been suppressing for over a month resurfaced in a painful blow. It was a while before Jim moved again. He slowly backed out of the room, leaving the door open, and plopped down onto the living room sofa. Shortly, he remembered about his dinner appointment and took out his cell phone, which read 4:54 p.m. He sent Billy a text. "Sorry, can't make it today. Talk to you at work." So Jim sat as motionless as a brick until he heard the door and opened and Bob walked in. His hurried footsteps carried across the hallway, followed by the sound of him closing the door, after which he emerged into the living room and jumped at the sight of Jim. "Oh hey, how come you're still here?" "I decided not to go," Jim said in a nonchalant voice as he could make it. "Fair enough." Bob shrugged and went to the kitchen. "You'll be returning to work tomorrow then, eh?" "Yes, I will. We're still in the assassination case." "Gotcha," Bob replied. "How high are the chances of catching the killer soon?" "Not as high as you, evidently." "Eh?" Bob swiftly turned around, his face tense. "What do you want about?" Well, it's hard to explain," Jim said. "What's wrong?" Bob gazed intently at Jim, as though trying to figure out how much he knew.
Good afternoon. This is David Burkhart, and I have a.
Who the fuck is that? I don't know.
Maybe shades background noises.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe the stash of heroin in your drawer? "You were in my room?" Bob's expression turned sternly and he didn't move. "What? Yes, I was in your room, but that's not the issue here, is it?" Jim waited, looking intently at Bob, whose unfocused eyes stared somewhere in this direction. "Well?" Bob snapped out of his glazed look. "Well, what?" he asked emotionally. "Are you going to explain, or—" Bob's mouth hung open still, not making it any easier for Jim. Did Bob not realize that this was a serious offense, and that he was going to jail for this? Jim tried to understand this from Bob's perspective. He must have found himself addicted after laying his eyes on drugs at some point in his life. If it was a long time ago, he probably didn't want to continue and hated himself for not being able to resist it. He was likely too ashamed to force himself to go to rehab.
Also, I'm just gonna note right here. We still had Asmolin submission after this one.
Yeah, and then there was the fact that Bob let Jim into his apartment. He evidently had the means to pay for it himself, but Jim decided to let Jim live in such a comfortable environment for a low price. He wasn't ill intentioned, just misguided, and if Jim turned him in, he would have to look for a room again. "Okay, listen," Jim said after long silence. "We're going to rehab, and I'm going to help you overcome this problem." There was another pause as Bob stood with a glazed look on his face. You sure love this word. As if his
Yes,
mind...
I used it twice.
That's like the third time. I just realized that it's repetition of that word.
It's used twice in the passage. Wow, I think it's used twice.
One too many times, last. One too many times.
And then you say gazed like 2 to 3 times, which is a very, very similar word.
That doesn't make it repetition, okay?
It makes it repetition in the eyes of, I'm reading this out loud.
Gazed and
Yeah,
glazed.
Yeah, Laz, you know how hard Internode struggles to read sometimes.
There's so much vanilla frosting all over his face.
He looks like a clown.
Well, I mean, he's white.
Okay.
Oh. Well, what does that make Jim then? Chocolate?
Yeah, there's a lot of chocolate. Okay, I should stop.
Yeah, let's just read on.
As if his mind was wandering in places miles away, then he gave a short nod and uttered, "Fair enough. Thank you, Jim." "We'll schedule you an appointment tomorrow then," Jim said confidently, determined to pull Bob out of the mess he was in. "Alright, fellas, now that we finally have a suspect, I expect we can work faster towards wrapping up the case. Great work today," Tom announced before leaving the room. Jim sighed and stood up. He understood why Tom was an encouraging approach, but from his perspective, they were no closer to identifying the culprit than they had ever been. The only lead they had on the current suspect was that he murdered the man's political opponent. "Hey, Jim, so how about that dinner now? I'm free tonight." Alexa's voice snapped out of his thoughts, and he turned around to face her. He was curious as to her sudden change of heart, but didn't see a reason to refuse her. "Sure, how about..." But she nudged him and scurried out of the room with a smile. Looking around to see what that was about, he noticed Bill Willie staring intently at him, as if trying to listen in. Jim felt a sharp tinge of annoyance, but he was then mildly surprised to see Bill nervously approach him. Letting out a shaky sigh, Bill asked, "Hey, Jim, I checked out the restaurant yesterday. It was great, so want to go there with me tonight?" For a second, Jim remembered how he ditched Bill the other night, and then the next second, he realized he would still much rather go with Alexa than Bill. "Sorry, man, I've got other plans tonight. Are you okay?" Bill looked heartbroken. "No, I'm fine. You have a good night, Jim." Jim was confused as to Bill's behavior, but then it hit him like a ton of bricks. Bill was gay. Wait, what? Wait, what? This feels like it came out of nowhere.
Uh, no. No, it doesn't.
It
hit him.
feels
It
to
hit him
me.
it hit him like a ton of gay bricks. It was gay.
Is that it? Is that the joke? Gay Rick?
Kind of.
The usage of the word bricks here is for meme purposes, but I don't see why you think that it just came out of nowhere.
Like, I didn't
you
get
do-
that impression.
It wasn't really hinted at that much, but I didn't see it as too much of a out of left field.
Jim felt bad for the guy and hoped he wouldn't have to outright tell him that he wasn't interested in men. The walk home was brief and carefree. Jim thought about dropping into Bob's bar to catch a quick break, but he decided he'd rather relax at home at the moment. Reaching his apartment, he opened the door and stopped with a feeling of uneasiness washed over him. The hallway was plunged in darkness, with only the light coming from the gaps below the 3 closed doors on the left. Jim was confused, wondering why Bob decided to turn off all the lights like this. He tiptoed towards the light switch to turn them back on, still on alert for anything else unusual. Once the hallway was lit, however, he felt no more anxiety, and even reproached himself for getting scared over nothing. Opening the furthest door, Jim entered the living room and headed for the kitchen to make himself a sandwich and some tea. As he was taking out a cup, he thought he had heard a sound coming from the hallway, and Jim froze to listen intently, but heard nothing. Perhaps the sound actually came from the shelves where the cups were, and he was simply in a paranoid state of mind at this moment. Nevertheless, he suspected Bob might have gotten home early, and kept glancing at the door until it opened. "Bob?" In the split second, Jim realized it wasn't Bob. The hooded figure pulled out a pistol and aimed it at him. Oh boy, he's about to die again. Instinctively dunked behind the counter just as a gunshot rang out, and the cup that was in his hand broke against the ceramic tile floor, glass shards piercing his hand. He groaned in pain before emerging from behind the counter. He grabbed a chair and flung it at the attacker, but immediately had to dive back behind cover to dodge another bullet. The masked man put up his arms to block the incoming chair. "No!" Bob appeared in the hallway behind the invader and jumped at him, causing him to lose balance and fire his gun randomly. He shook Bob off and aimed a punch at him, but Jim, who had already reached them, pinned the man to the floor. Bob panted for air, looking visibly shaken. Jim supposed he himself should have been more disturbed by this occurrence, but as soon as the surprise element wore off, it was nothing his regular job didn't encompass. What did bother him, however, is that someone deliberately targeted him at his home. In fact, the intruder looked eerily like the bank robbers Jim had encountered a few months prior. He didn't know what was going on, but he knew he had to do something about it. He pulled out his phone and sent Tom a voice message. Just attacked in my flat. Culprit captured and ready for arrest. 5 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. Jim led the invader into the hallway and opened the door, letting Tom with a group of officers in to apprehend him. As they let him out, Jim told Tom grievously, "We're going to need to discuss this attack tomorrow." Gravely. The fact that he knew where you lived is highly concerning. We'll figure this out in the morning, Tom quietly said. It's dangerous to stay here tonight. If you'd like a ride to... No, I'm fine staying here tonight, Tom. Jim, you don't need to be stubborn. I'm fine, Tom. Have a good night. Jim turned to see one of the officers cuffing Bob. No, don't worry. I'll interrogate him myself, Jim told Tom. Thank God. I was hoping you'd say that. We're overbooked tonight, Tom said. Uncuff him. He told the officer that had subdued Bob. Alright, let's get back. You have a good night, Jim. You too. Jim whispered back to him. He suddenly felt very drained of energy and emotions. So, Jim turned to Bob, sighing. What was that all about? That's what I'm trying to figure out, Bob replied. Good thing this happened to be right on the day that I decided to close the bar early. Then you're telling me you have no idea how the intruder knew our address? No, that's the confusing part. Was it you or me that he was after? Why would he be after you? Jim asked. You can see why he, a policeman, might have been a target for a criminal assault, but it made no sense for Bob to have been the intended target. For one, why would the invader pick a time when Bob wasn't even supposed to be at home? So you really have no clue about any of this then? Jim asked Bob, who nodded gloomily. Jim went to his room and retrieved his handgun, hoping heartedly that he wouldn't need it. Upon coming back, he asked Bob, will you help me move the sofa in the hallway? Wait, why? What do you mean? Bob asked. I'm sleeping out here tonight. If someone else tries to break in, I'll hear it. Oh, Bob paused. You sure you want to do this? Yes, man, I'm sure. This is our best bet right now. Bob looked tense, but nodded and accompanied Jim to the living room. It took them several attempts to relocate the sofa, after which the exhausted Bob withdrew to his bedroom. Jim sighed and headed for the kitchen to make his tea again. This was the night he most needed a good long sleep, and it was also the night he was least likely to get it. Oh dear. Sorry, I suck.
No, it's fine. I think we all have trouble reading when
Lazlin, you fucked the whole story up. I thought you were gonna fix the issue, but you didn't.
Oh,
you were the
boy.
one we went over this. We went over all of what I added, so it's your fault.
I know, it's my fault too.
Is it a spoiler, or can you explain?
I can explain. The part where Alexa wanted to go on the date tonight, I told Lazlin, hey, you should probably put it in there that he sends her a text saying he's gonna miss it or something. He never did.
Oh,
yeah, it doesn't ruin. Actually, no, never mind. That is the most important part of the story, and it completely ruins it. The story.
I mean, I was under the impression that they didn't actually make the plan in the first place because he never told her a time.
Yeah. Like, I think he was going to arrange it with her via text messages, but never actually came around to, because, he almost died. Again.
Again.
Yeah, see, make a prediction. How many more times is Jim gonna almost die in the story?
3.
How about 4? Orphan would like that more.
4!
Okay.
Alright. Cool. Chapter 5. He was floating in midair, desperately hanging on to nothingness to get away from a cloaked figure on the ground that was throwing javelins at him. One of the javelins almost hit him, and wait, what? What? What's going on?
Read on.
Just read, old man.
One of the javelins almost hit him, and he panicked and fell to the ground. The figure laughed sinisterly, arcing his hand back to deliver the finishing blow, and then got run over by a patrol car. Tom slithered out of the car, emerging from the shadows that shouldn't have existed, and told him in an echoing voice, "You will never be an investigator." Bill, Willie, and Oswald appeared in a cloud amidst Tom's side, pointing figures at him and laughing cruelly. Something in him snapped. He got up to his feet and shouted at them, anger overflowing every muscle in his body. Their expression changed to fear, and they backed away, scared on his onset of fury. Or so he thought. An echoing growl sounded mere feet behind him. He tried to wheel around, but his body felt like it was in a cocoon of molasses. With a great deal of effort, he turned to face whatever was making the sound, and what he saw made his blood run cold. A terrifying bestial face, sprawling limbs, gaping eyes. Gaping eyes. Okay. Rotten teeth. It was crawling nearer with every second. There was no escape. Jim, whoa, fuck! I dropped my water bottle.
Oh no.
Jim fucked. Jim woke up in a cold sweat, shaking. He sat up on the sofa and looked around. It was dark. The mild morning light peeking out from below the 3 doors on the side of his hallway. Jim sat motionless in his silence. He heard the sound of a key being inserted into a keyhole. So a fuck. He jerked
Of course.
towards his pillow in a wave of adrenaline, took his handgun out from underneath it, pointed it at where he supposed the front door was, and froze in anticipation. After a second of fumbling, a lock clicked and a door opened somewhere out of his sight. It must have been one of the neighbors. Jim put away his gun, relieved and stressed at the same time. Nice. Upon entering the kitchen, Jim glanced at his phone, which read 6:13 a.m. He made himself a bowl of cereal, ate it quickly, and sat in silence while mentally preparing for the day. 10 years ago, when he joined the police force as rookie officer, he knew there would be rough times in his career. He knew he would be ready to face them. At his lowest points, he still wore a smile. Thinking about it, he couldn't remember the last time he smiled in recent days. Due to his stress and exhaustion, he wished to have the chance to fall asleep again, but he knew that it was now off the table. He pondered his past choices silently until 7:24 a.m., where he finally decided to head to work. If anyone was going to attack him, they already would have by now, so Bob was likely safe. Jim took his time to get to the station, and the chilly air of the gray morning somewhat soothed his throbbing head. He almost felt ready to take on the challenges to come today. Jim entered the station using his key. He didn't expect anyone else to have arrived this early. The hallway he was in only had 2 doors, a restroom door at the right and the door to the main meeting room on the left, which was open. This led Jim to think someone had already arrived, so he strode towards the door. When he froze, his dread slowly settled in at the sight of what he was seeing. On the chair right opposite to the door sat Tom. His eyes were closed and his mouth hung open. His uniform was stained with blood and there was a bullet hole in his chest. So, in other words, he's dead.
Funny enough, Shade made
normally
me
people are
delete.
dead. Yeah, there was a sentence afterwards that said Tom was dead, and I was like, you don't need to say that. It's already fairly obvious.
Oh man. So I'm guessing your card is death because someone died.
Yep.
Actually, no.
I mean, it's character development.
Tom was alive and then he's dead. I swear. Where was my prediction of how many people were going to die? Hold on. I'm gonna look through this event discussion from enter node dead. Okay. From
Isn't there always people dying in Lore Jam submissions though?
Yeah, there is. But now it's an excuse to fit the theme.
The theme is death. That should have just been the theme. The theme is death.
Okay, here are my exact words. Prediction. Half the stories will have death as a card, and half of the stories will have someone die. So half the stories will have someone die.
Well, someone's dead.
Well, how many stories has had someone die? And
Orphans. Mine, obviously.
Dom's, he dies.
Oh yeah, yours Internode.
All of them.
Wait a minute. Oh, okay. So Lost Melons, but does that count?
Well, no, because I mean, the ending implies that no one actually died.
No, does that count as like towards the total?
I mean, I don't think so because I didn't actually think about what cards it was, which is a joke.
And I'm gonna go ahead and assume that no one dies in the straight human Lost One, the dating sim. So asteroids, midnight walks, the devil, and yin yang. So that is exactly half of the stories in which someone has died. Did someone die in Urban Story?
No, but okay, yours, Orphans, mine, and Dom's. That's
Yes.
4.
Yes, that's 4.
4.
There
out
are
of
8
6.
total.
Well, yeah, but do we count? Okay, I guess you wanted to fit, so yeah.
I predicted that half of the story someone was going to die.
I actually don't know what Darius the actual theme footage even is. Like, he used some names for cards, but I didn't see how they fit.
I didn't either, but I also didn't look too much into it.
Yeah, me neither.
Waves of pins and needles shot up and down Jim's spine. A pit spread in his stomach, and his head shortly started spinning. He couldn't comprehend what had happened, and yet here it was before him, irrefutable physical proof. He stumbled forwards and collapsed on his chair, trying to regain control of himself, but only felt worse as a wave of nausea came over him. He laid his spinning head on his desk. Tom, who had been known for 10 years, was dead. There were so many questions. How did he die? Well, what do you mean, how did he die? He was shot! He was shot! You saw the bullet hole! You pointed it out!
Yeah, but it's like the other circumstances, not... Okay, but
He
that
was
does
shot.
sound funny. It sounds funny, yes.
Where was his killer? This sent a shiver of alarm down Jim's spine. And then he heard something. Footsteps came from outside the hallway. Sporadic images of the monster he saw in the alleyway flashed into his brain, as if on cue. A growl echoed across the building. Jim jumped up and hit his knee on a desk. He doubled over in pain, then stood up and took out his handgun, ready to meet the monster head-on. He waited for the horrid creature to show up at the doorstep, and it appeared in sight. He shot. Ah! Bill Willie fell onto the floor, screaming in pain as blood gushed out of his stomach. Jim stood rooted to the spot in shock. He couldn't think. Seconds later, Oswald and Alexa ran to Bill's aid, and their eyes fell on Jim holding a gun in his outstretched hand, then on Tom's dead body. Well...
Well, this is awkward.
What do you think you're doing? They took out their guns in lightning speed, causing Jim to duck behind his desk. Wait, he cried out. It wasn't me. Stay where you are, shouted Oswald, who still had his pistol pointed at Jim. Alexa ran over to Bill, who had gone limp by now. I'm calling for medical, he said with a tone of urgency before taking out her cell phone. Jim stood there, breathing heavily as this outpounded. Did he just kill a fellow officer? Was he the one who really pulled the trigger? Yes. Yes, you did. Oswald approached Jim, keeping his pistol pointed at him, and took the gun Jim was holding. Jim didn't resist. Alexa dialed the address, calling for an ambulance. She then turned back to Bill. What happened? What did he do? He asked me in a quiet voice. He shot me when I came in, Bill wheezed. I did it on accident, Jim cut in. I confused him for an attacker after seeing that Tom was dead. Did you now? Oswald asked shakingly. He was pale as a ghost, and his friend's hands trembled as he held his gun along with Jim's. Yes, said Jim, strength coming back to his voice. There's no reason for you not to trust me. I can trust you, Brown. I can't trust you, Brown. Don't make this difficult, please. You can't. An idea crossed Jim's mind. The cameras, check the cameras. Oswald stumbled over to an old television set and turned it on. The screen flickered to life, showing the very station that they were in from the perspective of a ceiling corner. Oswald held down the rewind button, and the screen played the recent events sped up and backwards. Alexa calling the ambulance, Oswald backing away from Jim, Alexa backing away from Bill, Jim ducking behind the table and immediately emerging from it, Alexa and Oswald running out from the room, Jim shooting Bill, and Bill walking out of the room. Jim backed away from his desk, stood over Tom's body, moonwalked to the doorstep, lingered for a second, and backed out of the room. The room was now still, and Jim stared intently at the screen, but he didn't have to wait long. A dark hooded figure had entered the room and backed into a corner where it sat still with a gun aimed towards the door. Hold on, Jim muttered. Who was that? After about 2 minutes of sped up rewinding, the figure got up, backed away from the doorstep, and sucked a bullet from inside Tom's body into its gun. Tom stood up, and the figure disappeared. Okay, Jim said as Oswald paused the video. Had I walked into the office a few minutes early, I would have died too. Why did the killer leave, though? Yes, Oswald replied. If he decided to leave, why had he lingered for so long beforehand? That's what I'm thinking. Jim racked his brain. Perhaps a murderer got a call to go somewhere else. Oswald suddenly nudged Jim and handed his gun back to him. What if he's still here? He whispered. Oswald then tiptoed out of the room, motioning for Jim to follow him, which he did as quietly as he could. In the hallway, Oswald crept towards the restroom door. Jim positioned himself right next to the door and aimed at an almost parallel angle to it, since he'd figured that if the killer was there, he'd be hiding as far from the door as possible. Oswald took up a position on the other side, aiming in what would be the opposite end of the room. He reached out and pushed opened.
Pushed
Oh my
open.
goodness.
Pushed open.
Oh.
I've been waiting for so long to be able to point something out finally!
No!
You can bask in your glory. I think maybe Shade, maybe you suggested the word pushed, you typed it there, but like didn't remove open, and I just never noticed it.
Pushed open.
Pushed open.
No stories without typos, I
Took
guess.
you like 2 chapters to find an issue.
And in the split second after, Jim saw a dark shape where he was aiming and shot. The invader slid down onto the floor, a bullet through his heart. He's down, Jim exclaimed. Room's clear, Oswald said back. For the first time it would feel like forever, Jim eased himself up with relief. Seems he was counting on the rest of us not arriving until later, Oswald noted. As soon as he heard us, he knew it wasn't safe to come out of the restroom. Jim examined the dead man's body from a distance. The cloak was similar to that of the one in the man who robbed the bank a few months back wore. It seems there was some sort of gang affiliation between the two. Something clicked in Jim's head. The man that tried to assassinate him at his apartment. He was also wearing that same cloak. Oswald, Jim said quickly. I say his name slowly. He said quickly.
Yeah.
Oswald.
You know what that reminds me of?
What?
When in Lord Jam 2 you were reading Cole's story and you're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to us? The bearded man screamed angrily. That was one of the funniest moments.
Oh man. Yeah, he asked back. Last night when that guy who tried to assassinate me came to the station, did he say anything about being in a gang? Gang? No, Oswald said. Tom grilled him for about an hour and deemed there wasn't anything important to get from him, so he sent him off to await trial. The sound of an ambulance drew near, and the officers hurried to pick up Bill and escort him out of this situation. I'm going with him, Alexa told the other two in a vulgar voice. I'll tell you any news. As the ambulance disappeared from view, Jim and Oswald made their way back into the station, where they stopped in the hallway. Jim's head was still spinning, trying to process everything that had happened. He leaned against the wall. I'm calling forensics, Oswald muttered as he pulled out his phone. He's really gone, Jim said, emotionless. Don't think about it, man, Oswald said. Just don't. Wait, isn't Oswald the one with the really thick British accent?
Yeah.
Don't think about it, man.
He also has a high-pitched voice, so he can't really...
Don't think about it, man.
Don't think about it, man! Oswald said, just don't!
Okay, no, this takes a lot of the immersion out of the story. Stop.
Yeah, this is
Tears.
She's been waiting for this part.
Tears.
This is my favorite.
Tears began rolling, pulling. Oh my gosh!
Holy shit, Internode, it's a word.
Oh my, okay.
Tears began pouring down Oswald's face as he slid back against the wall and collapsed to the ground. He put his head between his knees as he sobbed his eyes out. Jim felt tears well up behind his eyes too. Tom was a father figure to him. He was everything Jim aspired to be, and he helped mold him to where he was today. All those times where Tom could have passed Jim off due to his skin color or the bad performance he occasionally had, but he kept on him and encouraged him to continue and grow as an individual. It was gone now. Tears slid down Jim's face as he repeatedly slammed the side of his fist into the wall. Gosh damn it!
God damn it, Bobby.
Gosh damn it, Bobby! He checked out. Oswald looked up, drying the tears off his face. What do we do, Jim? Jim pulled himself back together. Looks like we have a case now, he said with a strong confidence in his voice. We need to find out and deal with this group of criminals. We do. We have no one to lead it. Jim, why don't you take that place? Bum, bum, bum.
Revelations, yay!
Character development. He was an asshole, and now he's not.
See, this is actually true.
Jim turned to Oswald, who was looking at him with an expression he didn't understand. It was the same expression he would always give Tom. Jim was not sure how to feel about that, but he knew what he needed to do. Yes, I'll lead this case, and we'll find those responsible for, this, he said. Get forensics on the phone. I need to prepare a report for the media. Okay, Oswald squeaked. He dialed the number on his phone and put it to his ear. At that moment, Jim's cell phone rang. He took it out and saw that it was from a number he did not recognize. He answered it quickly. Hello? Hey, it's Bob, came a quiet, almost whispering voice. Please get to my bar and bring help. I think they're after me. Please hurry. Jim sprang up immediately. I'm on my way, he told Bob and hurried out of the room, beckoning Oswald, who was still on the phone, to follow. Jim was determined not to lose any more friends to this gang. I am questioning the motivations of this gang, but I suppose we'll have to see what it is. About 5 minutes later, an undercover police car pulled up to the bar. As the bar didn't open until 2 p.m., the parking lot was empty. Jim, Oswald, and 2 other officers scurried out of the car, ran up to the entrance, and tested it. It was locked. Mere seconds later, they heard a lock click, and Bob opened the door. An air of urgency around him. Come on in, he panted, locking the door behind him and leading him to the bar stand. If I'm right, they'll appear at any moment now. The officer sprang down behind the counter and went still. Bob remained standing, looking at the door. Every muscle of his body seemed tense. Over here, Bob. Jim beckoned for Bob to take over. Bob shook his head. They'll be more careful if they know I expected them. What's going on? One of the officers asked. I don't know, Oswald whispered to him, but stay alert. Minutes passed as they waited. Jim didn't even think about getting annoyed or impatient. They had more than enough experience being patient, and if this was a false alarm, then it was no harm, no foul.
So I'm noticing these like lacks of line breaks between paragraphs, and it bothers me because I checked and I didn't see them.
Also, I didn't know I could do this.
Oh, the reason why it's like this here is because on the Google Doc version, there's a page break right there.
I mean, maybe
There's a page break right there, and it makes it look like there's actually a break there.
So I think maybe the PDF is slightly different. I don't know.
Yeah, the PDF is the page breaks are different.
Eventually, the sound of fumbling keys appeared over the scarce noises of the street. As the front door was opening, Bob quickly looked away from it. He then looked back at it as Jim heard footsteps within milliseconds. Bob dived behind cover as a gunshot blared out and a bottle perched from the shelf behind the counter shattered, whiskey spraying everywhere. Man, Shade's popular today.
Right? I know who it is too. I wish this fucker would just leave me alone.
Footsteps rang out again. By the sound of it, the invader ran towards the counter where Bob disappeared. In a flash, Oswald and the other 2 officers. Wait. What?
What?
Oswald and the other 2 officers.
Well, Jim arrived with Oswald and 2 other officers.
Really?
Yes. Which I guess may not have looked like... yeah, and one of the officers even talked. No, it's down there. It's below. With the undercover police car.
And 2 other... Oh. Damn, I missed that.
Yeah, I guess it's easy to miss since they don't have names.
Alright, what happened? What's going on?
Alright.
Oh,
What did I miss?
Nothing important, really. Footsteps rang out again, and by the sound of it, the invader ran towards the counter where Bob disappeared. In a flash, Oswald and the 2 other officers jumped onto the counter and aimed down at the cloaked man, who panicked, unable to comprehend that Bob was not alone at the bar. Several shots from the police force rang out as Jim volleyed over the counter and lunged at the man, who was too busy trying to avoid the barrage of bullets to stop him. Okay, apparently stormtroopers.
sorry, I did not get that.
Stormtroopers.
They're not hitting them.
Jim kicked the gun out of his hands, lifting him up off his feet and slamming him on the bar stand. Oswald reacted immediately, hitting the assassin over the forehead with the butt of his gun. The man went still. Oswald took out his phone and called for more backup as Bob emerged behind the counter looking weary. Jim's heart raced and his breathing was painful, but he triumphed. He stopped yet another criminal and saved Bob, and having captured a potential source of information, he was now even closer to uncovering the truth behind this organization. Jim's phone beeped, and he took it out and see a text from Alexa. It read, "He's alive." Wait, what?
Bill Willie got shot in the stomach. She escorted him to the hospital.
Oh, right. I thought he was talking about Tom. Damn it. He's alive.
Oh.
He'll be a week in the hospital to recover, but he's fine. But he'll be fine. Jim was extremely relieved to see this. Bill was going to live, and he didn't accidentally kill him. As he shared the news with Oswald, a police car arrived and several more policemen barged into the bar and took away the culprit, who had already been cuffed by the 2 officers that had accompanied Jim. They all walked out with his unconscious body. Oswald looked questioningly at Jim, who waved his hand and said, "Take the rest of the day off. Go try to relax. I'll see you tomorrow." "I can't do that, Brown, but I'll head back to the station and see if that bastard is any shape to talk." For a small man who Jim always mistook to be annoying and weak, that was an awfully large change of tone. A small wave of numbness came over Jim as he realized that he too had changed today. "The greatest men are the ones who have lost the most," Tom always said, and it couldn't be any more true today. "Alright," Jim said. "Stay safe, Oswald." Oswald nodded and left, followed by the rest of the policemen. Jim sighed and headed out the door as well. Bob followed him. Once they were outside, Bob locked the front door, and as the car was gone, they walked back home. "How did you know?" Jim asked. He was stressed and exhausted. The events of the last 24 hours were worse than he had ever experienced throughout his career. Nevertheless, the question of how Bob predicted the attack was too pressing to put off. "I had a hunch," Bob replied. "Ever since I ran in to help you fight off the one in our flat, I painted a target on my back." That didn't make sense in Jim's mind. That criminal was arrested straight away, so how could anyone know Bob helped Jim fight him off? And why would they go after Bob at all if they could just focus on hunting down Jim elsewhere? It was too confusing for Jim in his current state, so he remained silent for the rest of the day. When they finally reached the apartment, Jim went to his room without a word, just shut in his drapes, and plopped down onto his bed. He didn't know how easy it would be for him to fall asleep, but he needed it regardless, so he lay down on his comfortable mattress, covered himself with a cozy blanket, and went to sleep. Oh, if only it was that easy for me to fall asleep.
Well,
Oh,
you gotta
yeah.
remember, he was exhausted. He wanted to go to sleep earlier that morning, but he went to work anyway.
Yeah, okay, I could pull an all-nighter and it still takes me 2 hours to fall asleep.
Rip.
Okay, this is a bit concerning. What I'm seeing there on the next page, or rather, what I'm not seeing there on the next page.
What are you not seeing on the next page, Les?
I think that chapter 6 starts. There was a line break above chapter 6, and there's empty space there.
Uh-oh.
So all the order is screwed up, and somehow I didn't see that, even though I read through the entire story before exporting this PDF.
I mean,
It looks fine on the docs version.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah,
I guess it's exporting then.
Yeah, it's literally fine on the docs version. I don't know why it's messed up on that one.
Yeah, weird.
Chapter 6. When Jim woke up, his head was heavy, knees weak, arms spaghetti.
I made the same joke.
I didn't actually get that.
It's an Eminem. He didn't understand that joke, Enchinode.
Oh no!
Okay. Is
He's
it a
so
rapper? Is that a
uncultured.
reference to a rapper?
Yes.
Oh my god, last night.
Is that a reference to a candy rapper?
Who doesn't know
Yeah,
that
an Eminem rapper.
song? Damn it, Enchinode.
Hello, Derry. Derry's already
Derry!
read the story, so it's not.
Yeah, Enchinode has literally found like one issue with all of Laz's story.
No.
And he was
Remember,
bragging about that issue.
remember that one issue that's gonna make the story place last?
Oh yeah, that one issue with this last chapter being
No, not the last
Weird.
chapter. The one that where
The end of chapter
Okay.
4, I believe.
yeah.
oh yeah, with him not texting. Yeah, that just completely ruined the immersion.
Completely.
Yeah, but you are
So
right.
so many plot holes.
You are right too, Shade. The fact that chapter 6 doesn't start at the top of the page, really bad too.
Oh man, this completely ruins everything.
Yeah, what the
Yeah.
fuck is this?
Makes Orphan's story look fucking amazing.
Yeah, what the fuck
Yeah.
is this?
Enternode, it's blame exporting. Actually, I'm gonna check my PDF version. Hold on, I have Lord Jam 4 right here, so I'm gonna check my PDF and see if that's the same for me. If not, then I don't know. Maybe there's, and we're using the same tool as well. Okay, not responding.
This is Adobe Reader.
Yes.
When Jim
Okay,
woke
here. Hold on. I just wanted to cancel. I just wanted to test to see. Yeah, it seems it's the same on mine. So like exporting to PDF and Google Docs is just messed up.
Yeah, you should use Word instead.
Yeah.
When Jim woke up, his head was heavy, arms weak, knees spaghetti, but he felt much less tired. He stretched, yawned, and got up. His room was dark with barely any light peering out of the closed drapes. He slowly headed for the kitchen, passing the sofa in the hallway. Jam? Where the fuck did I get that?
Did
Jam?
you just call Bob Jam?
Yes.
How'd you? Jam set.
Lord Jam.
Lord Jam set.
Bob sat at the kitchen table with a half a cracker in his head. Of course.
I missed no chances.
Chewing thoughtfully, Jim groaned and joined him at the table. Feeling all right now? Jim asked. Bob nodded and replied, "You? Yeah, I'm better. This was one hell of a day, though. Wait, you just got up? Yesterday was one hell of a day.
No. He got up like it's in the evening.
What?
The room was dark, so like he went up after the morning events. He just came home and slept, and he woke up in the evening.
It is for you. I still have to figure out what the heck is going on with these bandits. And there's the assassination, too." Jim's heart went heavy as he remembered the case of the presidential candidate that he was still nowhere near solving. "You know," Bob said suddenly, "I reckon I could help you with that." "What?" Jim looked at Bob, puzzled. "What do you know about it?" "I know that it's not important," Jim replied, "at least in light of what's happening lately." "You can say that," Jim said with a tinge of annoyance, "but we can't just drop the case like that. I still don't know what happened." "What happened?" Bob cut in. "Was the prevention of a criminal influence on the government." "What?" Bob looked Jim in the eyes and continued. "The murdered man, Eugene Streslov, was a presidential candidate for the Communist Party who was gaining popularity due to the people's satisfaction with the government. I've told you before, he was at my bar several times, and notably, he was always accompanied by a gentleman named Albert. Hey! Albert's in this story. He's the dick." Jim still couldn't see where this is going, so he listened on. "Albert Bergenstein. Have you heard of him?" Bob asked. "Hold on, the attorney? I've heard the name, but that's about it." "Well, he's not just an attorney. He also operates the most dangerous criminal organization in this city. Wait a second. Does he have anything to do with the people coming after us?" Bob nodded solemnly. "He never gets his hands dirty. But as he hasn't yet been found out, he uses his influence to keep his accomplices out of prison." "Okay." Bob's words started to make some sense to Jim, but he needed a lot more explanation. "First of all, how do you know all this?" "The bar," Bob said. "He's used it for his shady business, and all that he didn't tell me himself I overheard or deduced. He trusted me not to spill the beans, partly because of my attitude towards him, but also because he realized I'd know better than to make a move against him. He wanted power, so I gave him the illusion of it to keep him happy. Meanwhile, I've collected more information than he could possibly suspect." It took a while for Jim to process Bob's words. "Why didn't you let the police know about this then?" he asked. Bob looked at him as though struggling to find words. "I wasn't sure if I could, really," he finally said. "He could have probably wiggled his way out even with the information I had on him, and he wouldn't have felt safe at all." No, how would we have, with all you knew? You could have asked for protection, too." Jim found it hard to believe Bob told him all there was to the story. Bob looked visibly uncomfortable now. "Well, okay," Jim went on. "So you're saying this Albert guy had the candidate killed him?" "No, I never said that," Bob replied. "The fact that Albert repeatedly invited Eugene to the bar told me that he likely already had him in his deep grasp. Having a high-status government official under his control, not to mention a president, would have put immeasurable power and influence into his hands. He could have spiraled way out of my reach, and how could I have that?" "Wait, you killed them?" "No, of course not. No, I have many connections through the bar, so I called a rich friend of mine and brought it to his attention that a member of the Communist Party was likely to become the next president. I may have exaggerated a little, but of course he didn't want to have to give up any of his wealth, so he had the candidate assassinated." "But that still means you're an accomplice to murder," Jim pressed on. "I did what was right." Bob answered in a solid voice. It was only one person, and it was necessary to keep a dangerous criminal in check. You could have helped him apply for police protection. Jim shook his head. This is so obvious to him. Why did Bob not understand? It was now fully dark outside. As Bob took another cracker, of course, Jim sat in silence, unsure of what he needed to do. Why did this moral dilemma fall upon him now of all times? So you say this guy is very influential, right? Jim continued. Still, how did he just know all of a sudden where to find me? To his frustration, Bob looked even more uncomfortable now. He struggled for words for a solid minute. 59, 58, 57, 56, 55, 54.
So that means that when the story just says on the next day, we're just gonna wait for the next day.
Yeah,
keep reading?
obviously. I may have told him that you lived with me, he said, not even looking at Jim anymore. What? Holy... why? At this point, Jim wished heartedly that this was all a dream, that none of this was actually happening. Bob just sat there, breathing heavily and looking at the floor. Drugs are a horrible thing, he said, finally spoke again. All the emotions they make you go through. I was ashamed, embarrassed, angry at you for taking them away. It was misplaced anger, of course. What you did was better than anything I could have hoped for. But at the time, I was blinded by my negative emotions, so when Albert struck a conversation with me, I told him where we lived. His gang, of course, wanted revenge for you stopping the robbery. But hold up. But you ran in to save me. Had you changed your mind? Bob solemnly nodded. I realized at the last second what a horrible thing I did. That's why they knew to come after me. They saw me run out of the bar at the time I had suggested to them, and put two and two together. Time trickled as they sat still at the table. Jim's mind was racing. He could hardly comprehend everything Bob told him. He sat at the same table with a man whose criminal influence spanned far wider than he could ever imagined. But you shared all this with me, Jim whispered. Eh? Yeah, I did. I'm slowly starting to realize that this has a lot to do with heists lore, and I haven't read enough of it.
Well, I mean, I don't think a lot, because like there's the reference to Albert and like the bank robbers.
Which is the Barons Guild, right?
It's
Yeah.
weird, yeah. It's the Barons Guild, and it's kind of weird because it draws some connections with heist lore, and there's definitely some like similarities, but it's not like completely canon with it.
Yeah, it's not in the same universe, but I decided
Because
to...
like, look, okay, so in the first ever piece of lore that's actually in the Heist Gone Wrong game, whenever they're at the bar, the bartender's name's actually Bob. Except he's a short Hispanic man, which is where that reference came from earlier, where, in a parallel universe, you're a short Hispanic man.
Yeah, so...
It's really weird and interesting, and I love it.
Yeah, Shade, we were talking to Shade, and when Shade asked if Jim liked his coffee black, I said Jim probably doesn't even drink coffee, and he said, Jim is also in my universe, so I can make him drink coffee.
Yeah, I did make that comment.
Well, yeah.
Ugh, man. Even now, you could have gotten away with sharing much less to get what you wanted accomplished, which seems in line with what you've done thus far. Yet you told me things you can get in deep trouble for. Why? Bob sighed deeply. He looked like an old man regretting his life choices. Minutes passed in silence as he chose his next word. Sometimes I look at you, at your morals, for the first time, Bob's voice sounded like he was on the verge of choice. I wish I could be just like you. Bob powerlessly lay in his head on the table. Jim looked at his tortured face. The man who sat before him was a mastermind with the power to single-handedly bring an entire criminal organization to an end and effortlessly get rid of an important political figure, and yet here he was. Jim tried to find appropriate words, but none came up. After another minute, Bob sniveled loudly and looked up at Jim again. Are you going to turn me in? He asked. Jim stood up after a pause and passed around the kitchen. What he now knew about Bob was enough to land him in hard time in prison. He had purposely withheld important information about our crime group, possessed illegal drugs, and willingly arranged at least 2 murders, including one of Jim himself. And yet, after hearing him out, Jim couldn't find it in him to send him to that fate. Taking several more strides, Jim made up his mind. He stopped and sharply wheeled around to face Bob, who looked over at him, his expression still painted. Alright, Bob, so you have all the info we need to put end to Albert Bergenstein and his group. What do you say to helping me? Bob's face lit up in a rush of gratitude. Of course I will. I'll do whatever you need me to. Jim looked at the clock, which read 9:59 p.m. How about we go in the morning? He suggested. It's rather late right now. All right, okay. All right, Bob nodded sighing. He got up and walked wearily towards the door. We should probably head to sleep right now. It's been a long day. Fair enough. Good night. The television flickered in a loud flash of static, revealing a man in an unusually brown skin and sinister face. His look sent shivers down Jim's spine. He shared a resemblance with the monster who had haunted Jim in his nightmares, although not nearly to that extent. The man opened his mouth, and his ear-splitting voice carried across the room. Attention to all citizens. If you are tired of living under this corrupt government, now is your
Swear
time.
to God, if you read this entire part like that.
Now is your chance to speak up. If you do not find it acceptable for the authorities up top to have the choice to ruin your life over nothing, now is when you protest. We will no longer hide, cowering in fear. We will no longer pretend we have no power over the wrongdoings of the government. The power lies with the police, with us, and the time has come. With the people, with us, and the time has come for us to remind them of it. We now gather in the town square. Join us if you are sick of being told your voice does not matter. Join us if you want to improve the future of your country. We will stand up against the lawlessness of the authorities, and we will return power to the hands of the people. Join us and make your voice heard. Assemble and become a part of a movement that will change history. Today we take action for the sake of our future. The man stopped talking, and after several seconds, the television screen flickered and died. Jim's head started spinning. He knew he had to quickly get to the town square, as it was his duty as an officer to protect the people during public rallies. But what the absolute hell was going on? Who was this man? Why was he calling for a revolution? His rhetoric scared Jim. But what scared him even more was that he somehow managed to broadcast a message through a television that was turned off. Jim uncertainly turned to Bob. Do you by chance have an explanation for this too? Bob had a look of mingled shock and confusion on his face. No, he said slowly. No. How could it be? Bob? Jim addressed. Bob. Jim addressed him decisively. Bob snapped in his head towards Jim. Yes, he asked. I'm going to the town square. I have to make sure this doesn't escalate. I do not ask you to go with me. You can stay here in safety. Bob vigorously shook his head. Come off it, I'm going with you, he said with a note of finality in his voice. Okay. Jim answered, realizing he couldn't talk Bob out of following him even if he tried. Let's be quick then. Although Jim was expectedly scared, not knowing what would happen or whether he could make it out alive, the last several days grew to a new level of confidence in him. He had no desire at all to avoid this danger. Instead, he looked forward to doing what he did best, protecting the lives of his fellow citizens. Jim ran out the flat of Bob at his side, and he sped off to face the unknown. The end. Wait, that's it?
So the reason, the one thing I had with this story that I didn't particularly like was the ending. Because instead of it having a sense of closure, Laz opened it up for there to be sequels and stuff. Which okay.
Right. So when I started making the story, the one thing that I knew, the idea that I've actually kept even since previous story ideas, apart from this being Jim and Bob, was one particular character, and then I realized that I could tie it up with a story idea that I had in the summer of 2018. So first of all, Antonio, do you remember the villains of Music Jam 2 Tier 2?
Music Jam 2 Tier 2, they were, you mean the people Zarvid, the man who masterminded the market, and a couple others.
The Mastermind and the Two-Faced Maniac.
Yeah, those two.
Yeah, they actually appeared in the story, the Two-Faced Maniac. You remember who that was?
Okay, my mind is...
He was the guy that was laying in the alley that had that monster face.
Okay.
And then who later on stabbed Jim in the back.
Yeah, and he was playing that melancholic melody. Yes, that was that. Who the man who masterminded the market got the smallest connection with the in the story. It was just like a rich guy buying a villa, something like that. And then in chapter 6, Bob actually did mention him.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting
because Bob said that he got in contact with the rich guy he knew.
Yeah. Zarvid.
Arvid was mentioned in chapter 2, but it was like an offhand comment.
Yeah, but that's not the only time he appeared.
When else did Zarvid appear? I don't even know.
Take a wild guess.
Was it at the festival when he was with Hot Dog?
No. Okay, I'll ask you a different question that's gonna immediately straighten everything up. Who do you think the man calling for revolution was?
That was Zarvid?
I did. Okay, so I made sure not to outright say that it was Zarvid because that had to happen. But I'm sharing it with you guys because my story idea, that story idea was centered around the submissions of Music Jam 4 Tier 2. And you remember Derry's submission, right?
4 tier 2?
Yes.
4 tier 2. He made. He made that one those those songs that had to do with his like really weird chess game.
Yeah.
And Zarvid's retransformation was one of the songs.
Yes. But yeah, so as time went on, and I built up the story, it kind of it started making sense that the story was nice enough for closure to make sense in it, but I didn't stray away from my original plan. Which is why I can see why Shade, only knowing this part of what I had in mind, thought that, well, maybe if it was more, close and connected and kind of had a glimpse of the different characters' lives.
So basically, you did the same fucking thing I did.
Well,
You had something important happen at the very end of the story, and just like, well, read the next one to find out.
Yeah, but one thing that I didn't really make it work as much in your story is that your story had a lot of plot points that just weren't answered. This one made sure to answer basically all plot points before establishing this new event.
I wrote my story in 2 days. I don't
So
give a shit.
before Lazulin wrote chapter 6 and we were just with chapter 5, he said he was going to write chapter 6 and it was going to be this big revelation chapter. But my biggest issue with chapter 5 was this was looking like it was going to be a story about Jim and Bob, but it more or less turned into a story about Jim where Bob was just one of the characters. And Lazulin was like, don't worry, I'm going to find a way to tie Bob really heavily back into the story in chapter 6, and I'm like, good luck.
Yeah, and not just find, like, that was the idea that I've had for the entirety of the story. So I'm like, yeah, he's gonna get his time to shine. But yes, it is a story more or less about Jim, because he's the viewpoint character. In the world of this, where the story is set, Bob matters a lot more than Jim does, and you could see how. You can see. Well, I mean, I don't know if you guys made that connection, but Bob is the mastermind, and that is partly why I wanted to tie the story.
It's so weird how heist lore is tied into this story. The fucking lore jams, the other lore jams, the music jams, everything is like tied into this
I had a lot of fun writing the story.
Yeah, basically, I knew you were going to win, and so I didn't put any more effort than I did because I didn't want to.
Did you know you was going to win because I was editing?
I wrote it without concern for where I was going to place. I just wanted to rewrite the story, share it with people, and I definitely would have wanted to find out more about what happened in your world, Enternode.
Basically, I didn't have the fucking time to write anything that could even compare to this. So...
I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you, and thank you, Shade, for helping review this, and definitely make it better, because from what I've heard about Enternode's reviewer, he didn't really do much.
I literally sat through with Laz and went through every single fucking sentence of the story.
Yeah.
And offered so many goddamn fixes and changes. I nitpicked the fuck out of the story.
Okay, I have a bit more things to say. Enternode, was that...
I have something to say. This is basically Pending reviewing my story. I sent my story to Pending. He said he'd read it later, and then he doesn't.
Oh. Yeah, that's actually a shame. I actually kind of. Well,
Yeah, he was too busy getting evicted from the house by me.
So yes, so since Bob matters a lot more in the overall world, this story, the distinct part about this is yet you heard it come from Bob's own mouth that he wished he could be like Jim. It's like it provides emotional meaning to this. And now that I've written the story, like before I thought, okay, it's gonna be a short story with no expectations. It's just gonna set up the world, maybe set up Jim and Bob, mainly Bob because Bob is gonna matter more. But after like writing this and after going through and reviewing this, I'm like, okay, now if I want to write that story, I'm gonna have to try hard for it to like.
Yeah,
for
sorry
it
about
to-
that, Laz.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Keep in mind that I'm a perfectionist and I want to like improve things all the time.
I mean,
Yeah, and Trinode, basically every single line of dialogue in that story, it was refurnished because Laz is awful at writing dialogue.
Not every single one, like half
Every
of them.
single line of dialogue.
Oh yeah, no. Basically every single line when Shade came on, he's just deleted it immediately. He didn't even read.
Yeah.
He didn't even read the dialogue. He just deleted it, and just
I would read it in my head and I thought, man, that fucking sucks, and I would delete it, and Laz would be like, why did you do that for?
yeah. But realistically, it was like a third.
There
to
was
half
a there
of
was
the
a
dialogue.
part in the story whenever Bob discovered that or whenever Jim discovered that Bob had heroin and he confronts Bob where
Okay,
Jim
Shade,
where,
don't ruin it, okay?
where Jim straight up looks at Bob
Okay,
and
and
says,
Shade, I'm
"You're a
gonna ban you.
cracker."
No, I don't. I'm actually
He
gonna ban you.
he straight up looks at Bob and says, "You're a cracker." And I was like, Laz, that does not go for Jim's character at all. You can't say that. And
Yeah,
Laz was
but
like,
like,
and Laz was like, it's a no regret moment. And I'm like, delete that shit.
hey Shade, you're a cracker.
Wow, racist.
I don't regret anything. Okay, but yeah.
Uh,
We also
But I
have
kind of
Aspen
like
and-
how the Arcana card that could really be used to kind of symbolize this whole story is honestly probably the Strength card.
the what?
The Strength card.
Yes, it actually ties in with Jim a lot with his character.
It ties in with all the characters, especially
Yeah.
like Jim, Oswald, and to an extent even Bob.
It does, yeah.
I
With
mean-
Bob's like he has strength technically as he's the strength to he has the power. He has no. I just came up with it. He has a lot of power, but he doesn't have a lot of strength or something like that.
So
Okay,
like that quote that Tom said at the beginning, and it was also said at the end, where he said, "The strongest men or the greatest men are the ones who have lost the most," was sort of like a theme that played out through the entire story for Jim.
Yeah.
So he just kept on losing more and more and more, and at the end of it, he ended up coming out as a better person.
Yes. Yeah. That was definitely fun. Yeah. It should be death because someone died, said Derry. Yeah. But now we're going on to the dating life of straight human
I'm actually gonna go
Great.
because I have to go eat.
No, Shade, don't go. So we're coming on to the dating life of straight human
Oh
last
my
one.
fucking god! Okay, I'm gonna go
Oh.
click on the link.
nice. Absolutely lovely. Absolutely
Okay.
lovely.
I accurately described my dating life.
I mean, I all right.
This is the best dating simulator so far.
Brilliant.
Now, I think the only person who's probably gonna remember this is Kitty, but on the new year of like when 2018 started, I made something very similar, which was Swiss Alex, the dating simulator, and it just said the end. So I kind of just refurbished it for this purpose, but I added like visuals.
Straight human last one, the dating simulator. The end.
This should get a lot of points for being realistic.
Realism's on point.
All right.
But I mean, I guess I would have done more with my story if I didn't plan on not doing much now. Yes,
But,
there are a
Andrew-
bunch of untied plot points, but that's because I planned on doing more with them later. And if I did them in this story, it wouldn't make any fucking sense.
Makes sense. So that means that the next one's gonna be a masterpiece? Or at least it's gonna be like, it's gonna have a lot of stuff going on in it, I can expect.
Huh?
I mean, so that means that the next one's gonna have like a lot of stuff going on in it?
Okay,
because
yeah.
of it?
The next one, I don't think this is really a spoiler, but the next one is going to focus on what happens after you die.
Okay. Yeah.
I hope Orphan does a sequel to Asteroids.
Wait, where like the person comes back to life? Oh, you thought that guy was dead? Well, guess what? He isn't. Now the story can continue.
And then I woke up.
And then I woke up. Like, no, have it to where he wakes up from it, and then it's right back at the beginning of the first story. At the beginning of Asteroids. That was the dream he was having before the asteroid hit the spaceship.
Oh, yes. So he knows, oh, I had a dream, so that means that I should really pay attention now.
So now it turns into like a Final Destination thing where now he knows what's gonna happen and how he's gonna die and stuff, and he like tries to prevent it.
It would be cool if like the second story followed the life of his daughter, who became an astronaut, you know, and following in the life, but she didn't have her parents now, but she became an astronaut, and she got to explore that gravity-less green planet.
Gravity-less green planet.
And throughout the course of the story, she kind of found out about her father's fate. Maybe even found out that that broken spaceship that landed somewhere on another planet that actually had gravity on it. And and she somehow through that also found the note of her mom, and you know, explored that plot point. But unlike him, she doesn't actually end up killing herself. That's how character development. That would be really cool. But something tells me Orphan's not gonna do that.
Well, he's gonna do. Okay, this is what I was thinking. I was like, man, I bet you that asteroid is like the rock to that ship's helicopter.
Oh my goodness. Anthony, you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
No,
Yeah.
It's
So
like rock. Asteroid is to spaceship as rock is to helicopter.
There we go. I made this stream 100 times better.
Yep. Yeah, so basically the spaceship got hit by a rock, and
I still don't know like what the Orphan was thinking.
okay, guys. Here's an idea. What if whenever Orphan threw that rock in Dystopian Mindset, that rock entered a parallel universe where it became an asteroid and hit the spaceship?
okay, I'm gonna write a story that ties in those two points.
Oh my gosh.
but yes, when he wrote that rock, I think what he had in mind was like he threw a rock and they didn't see him throw a rock, but the rock broke a window, made a sound, and they like wanted to see what was going on there. But the problem with that was they're not gonna just stop looking at Orphan because of it.
The problem was the wording, and B, the entire idea of it.
Orphan, yeah, the internet actually find. Hold on, I'll send you an image the internet found of someone. Hold on, you'll see.
Oh, that one. Yes.
Yes, this one.
Who's this? Who found
Everyone
this?
just Googled someone throwing rocks at helicopters and found that video or whatever.
Oh my god.
Oh, man.
Just imagine that. He throws the rock, it enters a parallel universe where it hits the spaceship as an asteroid, and then it goes back into the world, hits the wall, and distracts a helicopter.
And then the spaceship with the green gas enters this universe again, and the green gas distracts the people on helicopters.
I made the joke in like in my initial read through of Asteroids that basically the green gas was made of Hulk farts because it's green and made Orphan Hulk smash. Like that's kind of one of the things that was like completely unexplained. Just like why is breathing this gas okay, but if it gets into your food, you can't eat it.
I just thought that was funny that he was walking against the fucking vacuum of space and just Entronode freaking out. And then there was a button by the hatch all along where he originally wasn't. He kicks it. He kicks the button, and then somehow doesn't get sucked out into the void. It was just amazing.
I think the button was like on the wall, so he was able to like hold on to that while the door closed. But that doesn't
walking
make it make
against the vacuum of space.
That was absolutely great.
That had to be like the highlight of that stream.
Like basically, I went off the wall on the first page.
Yep.
It was like a challenge. When is the story gonna make me go, what the fuck? And you're like 3 sentences in, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, brilliant, amazing, cool. Hmm.
But Entrepreneur, you never really shared your thoughts with Yin and Yang.
My thoughts. Well, here's the thing. My lack of thoughts are a good thing. Usually, I focus really hard on trying to find shit that's wrong with it. Now I'm just like, well, I mean, I could have written a story as good as this, but I didn't have the fucking time to do it. Also, like, when it got closer and closer to the deadline, I had those 2 exams to worry about, and I'm like, well, I have to basically finish the story in one day in order for me to actually like have time for school or not submit anything.
Yeah, that makes sense. That hence why the story isn't too long, and it's still nice enough to beat orphans.
So it's still nice enough to beat orphans, and I wrote what, a fifth of the pages.
Well, the
It's-
pages he just had a really big text.
It's like orphan story. Take out every single page and where nothing happens, and you get the length of my story.
But not the word count. Although I don't think there were too many moments where like really nothing happened. There was still exploring things about his things, but there were some things that he should have left out. Also, I'm saying things so much.
Yes, there was a lot of things in the story. I think it's amazing.
Yes.
Did he have anybody review his story?
No.
No, he didn't. He said like that the people who were actually good at writing, who he knew, were busy at the time.
I actually tried to get Derry to let me review a story, but he never sent me his.
I don't think he wanted you to, since it was like all unfinished. Which makes sense. I can understand him there. He's still in this chat, right? You are, or are you still in this chat? Oh yeah. Oh.
I kind of forgot. It was strapped for time anyway. Brilliant.
Yeah. All right.
I think I'm gonna go get some food with my friend. Glad that you enjoyed the story, Anchinode. It was a pretty big project on both of us.
Yes, definitely, and I definitely think we'll have a lot of fun here on the stream.
I definitely think Labs is gonna enjoy that first place.
I'm gonna get 50 points off for submitting really late.
You're gonna get, okay. It was half a point for each hour, I believe. So you're gonna get a 12-point penalty.
No, but I straight up told Kitty that if you subtract 50 points from me because of lateness, I'm not gonna get mad. So now if she subtracts 50 points, I'm not gonna get mad. But I don't
If you
think
subtract 50 points, you'll probably still get first.
Oh, that's
Well, how many
harsh.
points are there in total, though?
That's a good question. Like in the last grading scale, there was 150. So 12 points doesn't really matter that much.
She never mentions how many points there were total.
Yeah.
It could be very well that it's out of 100. In which case, 12 points would actually be a huge detriment.
Yeah, and if she's using the previous grading scale, then that's even more so. Alright. Well, Shade's gonna go eat with his friend. I'm gonna go eat with my imaginary friend.
Oh, y'all have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
Great.
Yeah, great stream. This is definitely less submissions than in the previous jams, but still a lot of fun.
Mhm.
So, yeah, Derry, we're just gonna eat with ourselves. Alright. Goodbye, Internode.
I'll eat dairy.
I'll eat pasta. He's not even there anymore, but... Alright. There's like, wait, what?
I'll eat him out.
Don't question me, Derry.
Don't question.
Now I'm gonna do my usual outro for my videos. Goodbye. Bye.
Oh my god.